Welcome back to another episode of Shogun CRO Expert Series, where I talk to e-commerce marketers, operators, and CRO agency owners about what is actually working in optimization and A/B testing today. Today, in this episode, I am talking to Adam Pearce of Blend Commerce, a Shopify CRO agency, and he's also the founder of Ecom Collab Club, a networking group for e-commerce brands. Adam and I have a great conversation. We talk about some recent shifts that have changed CRO for good, what every brand should know before they run price testing, and why it's so important to know these numbers. And he even shared a test that his agency ran last year for multiple brands, and it worked for every brand that they ran it for. Adam has been doing this a very long time. He has a wealth of knowledge to share, and I highly recommend checking out this episode if you want to know more about A/B testing and optimization. Adam, thank you for joining me today. Before we dive in, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about you, Blend Commerce, all the good stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Maura. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Adam. I'm one of the co-founders of Blend Commerce. So we are a CRO agency that works exclusively with Shopify brands. I guess, follow a principle which is called the buy trifecta. So ultimately, the way that we look at an e-commerce business is there's three parts to that trifecta: buy now, buy more, buy again. And ultimately, what we're doing as a CRO agency is helping the brands that we work with either get customers to buy now, buy more, buy again. And that effectively is as simple as it is. So we use lots of different tools, mainly data kind of driven to understand what's happening. And off the back of that, then, which of all of those metrics do we need to actually impact? We will then run tests, implementations off the back of it to try and get that conversion rate, AOV, and ultimately revenue going up.
Yeah, which is the dream. That's what everyone wants in
Yeah,
every
we try.
industry. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I know you've been around for a long time. I know you've been working in Shopify for a long time. And I want to know kind of how you're feeling about like CRO as it's evolving. Because I think what we've seen certainly on our end at Shogun is like at first people just wanted pretty websites. They were like, let me just have a beautiful website and we'll be golden. And now it's just not the same. Like you actually need to look a little bit deeper. So I want to know like what your thoughts are on CRO, how it's evolving, and what you see kind of moving forward for brands that need to know if they want to dive into CRO, like this is what they should be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, look, two main shifts really in 2025 were that number one, a lot of brands started realizing that actually making a website pretty isn't what CRO is about. And, a lot of the time, I think, and I've had multiple calls, over the years where people are saying, look, we've really focused on the UI, we've really tried to make it appealing to our customer base. But unfortunately, what you realize is that actually sometimes the experience, the functionality on the site is actually 10 times more important than the way it looks. And look, the proof in point with this is Amazon. Amazon is not a sexy looking site. Does it convert like hell? Yes. Does it have brilliant AOV? Yes. So that's one thing. I think the other thing as well is that this siloed view of thinking has changed. I think maybe kind of, 6, 7 years ago, people would say, look, we'll do SEO for 6 months and we'll drop it and we'll pick up CRO. We'll do CRO for 6 months and then we'll do email. People have very much realized that you need CRO, SEO, you need email marketing, and you need ads to be able to run a successful business. And the levels of those will change over time, but you're always going to need an element of them. I often talk about this, and I've said this before, is that it's a little bit like having a dog. If I feed my dog every day, but don't take them for a walk or don't give them water, that dog ain't going to look too pretty after 1 week. So ultimately, feed your dog, water your dog, walk your dog, you got a good, healthy dog.
I like that. As a dog owner, that definitely speaks to me. My dog would go nuts without her daily walk. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, there's just a whole 360 thing happening. There's so much competition. I feel like there are new Shopify brands starting all of the time. And now like influencers starting brands, so they already have their audiences built in. And yeah, you really got to think smart about this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, look, as the market's matured, and a lot of people that maybe started businesses 2, 3 years ago, that we talk to are now in the position where they are maybe doing, kind of like between $2 and $5 million. They've got there without kind of realizing what they're doing. They don't know what they don't know. And I think when you open up this whole new world to them that is CRO, and like you guys know very well at Shogun, there's so much information that you can unlock about what your customers are doing, are not doing, and equally what visitors are not doing and are doing, that you then have a whole new world to explore, which is why CRO can be quite an exciting area to get into if it's not something that you've really actively done before.
Yeah, yeah. Which kind of brings me to my next question is, when is someone ready for CRO? Like who is there like a cross line that they finish that they're like, now I should think about CRO? Is it something they should think about immediately? What does that look like for different size brands?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, look, I think what I would say is for brand new businesses starting there are a whole heap of information available from people like ourselves at Blend on our website. I think there's about 70 or 80 A/B tests that we've run on there. There is lots of best practice things that you can do to make sure that you from day one are using best practice principles. Equally as well, when it comes to kind of working with designers to build a landing page, there are again lots of best practices you can follow. That's day one. I think the other two inflection points for me are one of which when you hit about 10,000 visitors a month, and the
Mhm.
other one at about 50,000 visitors a month. Now, 10,000 visitors a month for me is when you can start looking at some of your data, like your Google Analytics, and maybe some of your Hotjar or heat map recordings, whichever platform you use is fine. You can at that point start doing some smaller scale tests. At 50,000 visitors a month, that's when the magic can happen in that you can start running A/B tests that will actually be then statistically significant. So
Mhm.
ultimately, yes, you can run them at a lower level. In our experience, we find that they take far too long to prove or disprove. But for me, startup 10,000, 50,000 are your three CRO inflection points.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So 0, 10, 50. 10 is where you can start playing a little bit, but 50 is when it gets really fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I think anything before that, I mean, I've seen it a lot with some of our customers is like they start these tests and it just takes so long. I mean, you can't run a test for months to get,
No.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
No, I mean, as an entrepreneur, it is difficult to tell someone to not spend money with you. And it pains me to do it, but ethically, morally, and in the long term for my mental health, it's the best thing to do because we have brands coming to us, that maybe have got sort of, 3 to 9,000 visitors a month. Apart from giving them some ideas on best practice, there isn't
Mhm.
anything else that they should do at that point apart from put all of their cash into bringing traffic to the site. And whether
Yeah.
that's paid or whether that's organic, whatever they're going to do, so paid or SEO, doesn't matter. Get that traffic to a level where you can start learning. Until that
Mhm.
point, don't mess around with CRO, do the basics, testing, forget about it. Traffic, traffic, traffic.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't test with no audience for sure. All right. So if if I was a new client and I came to you and I did have, let's say, over 10K, over 50K, I'm assuming you start with running an audit. What are you looking for when you're auditing a site? Like what are some red flags, green flags? Like what give me a little bit into your process. Not too much, just enough.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we run something called the CRO Insights, and effectively what this is that one of our strategists, first of all, will go through a site from top to bottom. So what we call a heuristic analysis, looking at things that they think could be an issue. So there might be maybe 150, 200 ideas. With that, then they will then reduce that list down by trying to corroborate that hypothesis they have with data from GA4, from Shopify Analytics, from heat mapping software. Some of the things will fall away, some of them will remain. But what you then are left with are generally between about 40 and 60 recommendations for the store, which we will then use something called PECT. So it's proof, ease, cost, time, impact. And that's a
Mhm.
scoring mechanism to tell you which things need to come first and which some things come last. And then that PECT process then becomes a living and breathing document. It's not just a static list of stuff that you need to do for the site or an agency needs to do. It's living and breathe as the business changes, as data changes, the priorities change as well. And that is exactly how we handle it for businesses of any sizes that we work with.
I love it. It's wild to think of how many, because you guys work in this and you do it so often, like how many things you can see as soon as you get to a site. Because if you think about it, there are like millions. I feel like the CTA color is like the most popular like A/B test idea when people like Google it. But really, there's so many elements. And if you think about the flows, like what, what they're trying to achieve, I mean, the list of things you can test is probably very, very long for every single site, no matter how many pages they are.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, there's certain things as well. I would say, look, anyone listening to this, last year we had 3 or 4 things that work for every single store we work with. One of which that we did was the exposed search on mobile. So at the moment, on your
Mm.
mobile version of your store, if you have a little magnifying glass in the top right-hand corner, expose that so as a search bar. Every single time you ran that test, conversion went up, AOV went up, the more you learned about your customers went up. So look, with that one, guys, grab it, do it if you're not doing it already.
Yeah, gold tip right there. Geez, that's cool. That's wild. It makes perfect sense, but like it's wild.
It's crazy how much impact there can be from that very simple change. But the only way that you'll understand that is by looking at actually how your customers interact with your current search, what volumes are in there, what they're searching for. But that's one of the things I would say, look, go and look into that data, whether it's with an agency or predominantly with yourselves initially.
Yeah. Yeah. Which gives me brings up a good point about like data. So you mentioned a couple of sources that you look at, GA4, Shopify, maybe some heat maps. Do you combine all that data into one? Like, have you ever run into a problem where like the data isn't telling you the full story?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, look, this happens a lot with particularly bigger stores, where you're maybe talking about sort of, 150,000, 200,000 plus traffic a month, because what can happen in those scenarios is that you need a little bit more qualitative information to help you make the call. So
Mhm.
it might be that, for example, what is being displayed in terms of your session recordings or your heat map recordings of where people, for example, are clicking or they're exiting on a site may then actually be against the metrics that you've got in terms of conversion AOV. What you need to generally do in those situations is kind of go down more of the qualitative route. So we would run things like jobs to be done surveys or NPS scores, effectively, customer surveys whereby we are trying to understand the psyche of that customer, of why they made a decision to do that particular thing on that site. So the qualitative side, I would say not every brand needs to do that initially, and it tends to be for the bigger brands where the picture is
Mhm.
incomplete, but you always have that ability, even as a brand new business, to pick up the phone and send an email and say, hey, you bought from us last week, we saw you're on the site again. You didn't buy. Is there anything you could share with us to help us?
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised, that 20 to 30% of people at all different scales of businesses will give you some feedback that can be absolutely gold.
Yeah. I love that because it's such a, I think qualitative data scares some brands and some people. Like I think there is a resistance to like even something as simple as sending out surveys. Like just I don't know. I don't know if people just don't know what to do with it or how to act with it, but yeah, the numbers only tell so much. There's a whole story underneath.
Well, I think more it's also, like I the way I look at it is that it's kind of that ugly child syndrome as well. I would never want to say, put a picture of my daughter on social media and say, is my daughter ugly? Because A, I don't give a damn if it's useful anyway, but ultimately I am not objective. And I think, this is the thing with brands in particular, by purely looking at the quantitative data, you don't have to deal with that hard scenario. There are going to be some people that don't like your site, that don't like your product, shouldn't even be buying your product in the first place. But trust me, you can turn all of those experiences into so much gold for your site. So thicken the skin up, bite the bullet, ask, ask, ask.
I was just about to say, like, thinking the skin, it's just like a muscle. You just have to work that muscle and get a little stronger and like hearing feedback because feedback is so critical when you want to improve your site without just throwing more money into ads. You got to be able to look at it objectively, even when people have crazy feedback, which I'm sure you've seen. I know I've seen. I'm sure every merchant watching this has just seen some crazy feedback. All right, cool. So I want to pivot a little bit, talk to you about AI. AI tools, they're like everywhere, right? Um, do you think they're going to change how people approach CRO or e-com in general? Like, do you have a prediction on what AI is going to do?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think at the moment, AI is making CRO worse. And what I mean
Ooh.
by that is that I feel that what I tend to see in terms of discussions I have with brands is that they have asked generally ChatGPT what ChatGPT thinks of their site. And without going into the ins and outs of ChatGPT, effectively all ChatGPT doing is looking for any kind of small reference that may mean that your site is similar to another site that's elsewhere and giving you feedback off the back of it. And usually ChatGPT is trying to make you feel better because it wants you to keep consuming it. And I think we just need to take a step back in everything we use AI for to realize that that is what AI is doing because the creators of it want us to keep consuming it. However, I'm not going to be down on AI because I use a lot of it. For me, the key thing is that we need to start using AI in CRO for the number crunching, data
Yes.
analysis, all of the stuff that we used to do on pivot tables, on Excel, sitting there for hours trying to work this stuff out. Let's use that instead. Because ultimately, with that, then you are going to get a much more finer, refined view of what your store is doing. I think the difficult thing is, and this is why, learning, skilling yourself up, using experts is still important because it's the interpretation of that where the real value in CRO is going to be. The data analysis side of AI is going to take over from a lot of the stuff that people like ourselves do. But the
Mhm.
real part of saying we understand why this thing should be done and the hypothesis behind it is correct or is false or is this or is that. That's where I think, agencies are going to earn their money and CRO tools are going to earn their money, where
Yeah.
they can give that confidence to an end user and to a brand merchant, whether that is a tool or it's an agency, that this is the right thing to do and justifying that rationale behind it. That's where I think I'm conflicted, I would say, about AI at the moment. Some great stuff, some not so great stuff.
I first of all, I don't think you're alone. I think many people are conflicted about AI, and I think you had a very nuanced take, and you touched on something that is so important is ChatGPT just wants to make you happy. Like it agrees with you. It will agree with you. It will tell, it will make you feel like you're doing the right thing. Which unless you like explicitly tell it not to, which people don't always do. And even when you do that, it can kind of go off the rails a little bit. Like ChatGPT really uh I've found if you ask it too many questions. So I love that because I think the very common thing that I've been seeing a lot is just plug your site into ChatGPT and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And it's like, well, ChatGPT doesn't know anything about your business or like, what your goals are, or what your numbers are. Like, are you putting everything into ChatGPT? Probably not. If you're just putting a link in, or if you know, a consultant is just putting a link in, it's not going to get you the answers, but data for sure.
Yeah, I think it's very much like, if I took a picture of my car that's out on my drive right now and put that in ChatGPT and say, is this a good car? What is it going to do? Well, it's going to look at the color of it, it's going to look at the registration plate, it's going to look at the brand, and it's going to make lots of assumptions about that car. What it doesn't know is that last week I took it off-roading and actually the exhaust is about to fall off that it can't see. And actually I went over in the desert with it and the engine's flooded with sand. So I think that's the way to think about it is that without that additional data about your site, it doesn't know what's under the hood. And it's exactly the same thing, cars, website, whatever. ChatGPT is doing the face value part, not the deep dive.
Yes, yes. which is why you actually have to do the work, which is unfortunate for some people. They don't want to do the work, or you hire someone to do the work. Either way, you can't get around it. All right. So I want to ask you a couple of questions about price testing because I know this is something you've run for your customers. We just rolled out a price testing tool at Shogun. So I'm very curious about when it makes sense for someone to be price testing, why they should do it. And if you have any learning that you guys have seen running price tests for your customers.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I think the first thing is, and I post this a lot on LinkedIn, understand what your profitability is. And I'll say it again, understand what your profitability is. I speak to a lot of e-commerce directors, e-commerce founders, and either the net profitability, gross profitability, LTV, whichever North Star profitability metric you use, you need to know that first of all, because otherwise, how can you necessarily assess any decision that you have for your site? We need to move past that first of all. I think once you understand that, you know what level you can price at if you need to hit a particular profitability metric. And I know it sounds like I'm being patronizing here, but ultimately we are all guilty of this. We get very ahead of ourselves and forget the fundamentals. Everyone bangs on like unit economics on LinkedIn and e-commerce. Ultimately, are you going to make some money out of doing what you do? Once you've got that down, for me, what it's about is that doing smaller level tests. So can you test those pricing off-site first of all? For example, can you do it to a subsection or a smaller demographic of your email list to test that pricing?
Yes.
The other thing as well is that what feedback have you elicited about pricing? Do you have an on-site chat where people are asking for discounts? Do you see that in terms of your keywords for your brand, that people are putting in brand name plus discounts? Do you offer discounts already? So what you can do with that information then is to understand, A, is there actually a need for me, first of all, to change the pricing here or test the pricing to give you a bit more of an insight? But I think overall, when it comes to those price tests that you can do, doing it in a controlled manner of offering it to smaller subsections. And a lot of the time when we've done this, we've done it through landing pages to be able to then protect that if you're not using an app like you mentioned with you guys. And then off the back of that, then slowly rolling that out. But wild variations in pricing from day to day only causes frustration and confusion and ultimately bad things in business. So it's got to be controlled.
Yeah, it's got to be controlled, small. And I think people would probably be surprised at how much they can learn with even small increments. Like, just it doesn't have to be a wild something's on sale for 50% off versus like the original. Like, sometimes those little dollar amounts add up
No,
for
absolutely.
profitability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's also when we talk about testing and pricing, I think we also get transfixed on something going from being $20 to $15, for example. But what does it mean if you were to create bundles whereby technically the price of that has gone from $20 to $17 because they're buying something else that is then part of a bundle? What about subscriptions? What about memberships? So, all that kind of element of pricing that we don't automatically gravitate towards when we think about it, we think of single pricing, that is within our armory that we can use when we're testing pricing as well.
Yeah, yeah, super smart. All right, my last question, because I've, thrown them at you for the last half an hour. Tell me about the Ecom Collab Club. Tell me how people can get involved. Give me your pitch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Ecom Collab Club is now a global organization that creates e-commerce events for brands, for tech, for agencies. What we do is that we get together every month in London at the moment, whereby we have about 140 people. We have panels, we have networking. It is very relaxed. There is quite a lot of swearing. I didn't swear today, thank goodness. It's a very collaborative, non-salesy environment whereby people can come, hear stories from founders, good, bad, and ugly. And obviously, if people want to join us in London, we do that once a month. And you can find details on Google, ecomcollabclub.com as well. Plus, obviously, check us out on LinkedIn too. And even if you are the other side of the pond, in the States or in Canada, where a lot of our clients as an agency are from, you can also get involved with online activities and a lot of the other email marketing stuff that we do too.
Yes, which I'm gonna get Shogun involved with this year. On my to-do list. And don't you guys like you have coffee and sometimes you have breakfast, don't you? Do you sometimes
We
serve
do.
breakfast?
Yeah, so our events run from 8 a.m. in the morning, and yeah, that's 8 a.m. I ran Ecom Collab Club in New York a couple of times, and obviously in New York they're like 8 a.m. Like no, 8 p.m. maybe in a bar.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's but we kind of get in, we get it done. Look, it means that people generally aren't drunk at our events, which is also helpful for networking. And
And learning, yeah.
absolutely, and we have a darn good breakfast. So it used to be pancakes, and it's now more of a bagel vibe. So
Love it.
but for the UK, that's still quite fancy.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Adam. I will link Blend Commerce below. I will link Ecom Collab Club. I will also link Adam's LinkedIn, which is how I found him. And he shares a lot of great tidbits and just interesting things to think about. And you're pretty funny. You got some jokes on LinkedIn too, I would say.
All right, I'll try
Um,
now.
yeah, you're a good follow. So thank you for chatting with me. We will make sure everyone can find Blend and all of your resources that you mentioned. And I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Adam as much as I did. Like I said, he has so much wealth to share. I highly recommend following him on LinkedIn. I also recommend following Ecom Collab Club. And if you're in the UK, joining one of their breakfasts because I always have FOMO when I see the pictures from them. So I have linked everything about Adam below, everywhere you could find him. So make sure you give him a follow. And if you learned something new in this episode, please let me know. Send us a DM or give us a comment about what you learned, what you like about this series. We'll be back in a few weeks with a brand new expert.